I've spoken in other videos about mentoring, leadership, training, onboarding, different principles that we see in many different industries. If you are a mentor, if you are a leader, and you are in that process of onboarding people, sometimes you can get burnt out and you can just get frustrated, especially if that's not necessarily your gifting. If you're in a smaller organization and you can't afford a full-time trainer, so you're taking people who their strengths, maybe their personality type, isn't necessarily geared toward mentorship. How can those people understand how to approach employees and training? It really comes down to just focusing on relationship. When you're initially training someone, it's very easy to focus on results. Have they gone through the content? Have they answered the questions correctly? Have they gone through the training course? Are they meeting the metrics that we've handed to them? There's a lot of things that are easy to fall back on. I've always tried as hard as I can. If I'm coming into a team as an outsider, I try to build a relationship with everyone who's already there before I hand down any sort of corrective action. If they don't respect me, why would they listen to me? If you don't respect someone, if you don't know them, you're not necessarily going to take advice from them. I want to have a relationship and I want people to make changes because they want to be better for me. That's the best kind of employee. They want to be better for the organization. If you focus on results, if you focus on numbers rather than that relationship first, you're losing freedom. If you focus on product rather than process, on particulars rather than principles, it's very difficult to be so focused on all the data and still be a relational leader and maintain relationships with employees. If you're focused on the data, on the numbers, on the output, and you're not taking time to understand why this person might be struggling, how they're approaching some of these things, then you're losing your freedom to manage and your freedom to relate with those people, pushing yourself into a box. Respect isn't just something you can do, because it's not something you can do until you have it. If you've never been shown respect by a manager, it can be difficult to know what it's like to show respect to employees. One of the principles that I've come back to many times, especially when I'm working with an employee who might be a little difficult, and sometimes when working with an employee that other employees are telling me that's difficult, I don't know what that person's going through until they've confided in me and until I've built that relationship. I try to have this type of relationship with all my employees. When they have to call in, they don't have to give me specifics. I don't need specifics, but most of the time, my employees give me specifics. Whether I ask for it or not, they trust that I'm not going to take and abuse that information because we have a relationship. They know that I care for them beyond just them being in the seat doing the job. Never judge someone's story by the chapter you walked in on. Everyone has something they're going through that you know nothing about, and it's important in any kind of person-to-person relationship to keep that in mind. This is not only a great principle for managers to keep in mind, but also for mentors. When you're training someone, if you're focusing on results, you didn't do that, focus on the relationship and you will build that training much quicker, much faster. Hey, I noticed you missed this thing. Is there something I can do to help you better with that? You're even flipping it on yourself. You're being vulnerable. You're creating a question in a way that flips it back on you. Is there something I could do that might help you understand these principles better? By doing this early on, you are able to create an environment that could alleviate toxicity or cynicism later on from your employees. If they come into the organization and they're handed their metrics that they need to meet, and that's all you do, all you focus is on those metrics, you're not necessarily focusing on building a relationship. If your conversations start and are focused only on their metrics, you're going to burn out those employees. They're not going to come to you when they have a problem because they're afraid of you. If you're only focused on results, why would they bring an issue to you that they're having? Great leadership isn't about control. It's about empowering people. If you're focusing solely on results, solely on metrics, solely on numbers, you're essentially trying to control. That's what it looks like, regardless of whether you just like the data. If you're not keeping the relationship at heart, you can't empower people if you're saying, here's the metric that you missed again this month. Next month you need to hit that metric. Oh, you missed it again. Next month you need to hit that metric. Oh, you missed it again. You are going to be fired if you don't hit that metric. If that's the only conversation you are ever having with your employees, why would you ever expect to build a relationship with them? Why would you ever expect them to respect you at all? It can be very difficult in management because there's not a good way to not come off as a bad guy. Even if you are respecting your employees, you're doing everything you can to build that relationship, management is still leading by example. You're setting the bar that you want your people to follow. I know my manager's not afraid to do the things that they're asking me to do, or I know that they've experienced these things before, and I know they understand why I struggle and where I struggle. They encourage me to work through these struggles, and if I don't hit that metric again this month, no, I'm going to have to answer for why I'm not able to hit this metric, and I need to work on this in order to hit this metric for my manager. If your employees see you working all the time and doing work and keeping busy, they know they can't get away with not working. If I say, I've noticed that your numbers are slipping, is there something going on? Is everything okay? Approaching those questions from a place of respect and also from a place of care, vulnerability, empathy, I always get better answers if I were to come in and lay down all the numbers and say, these are everywhere that you've fallen short the last month. Leaders, your customer is not your shareholders, not your stockholders, not even necessarily the customers of your organization. As leaders, your customer is your employee. Leadership is a method of customer service. You're taking care of your employee. You're helping your customers accomplish their goals. You are asking them, what are you trying to accomplish? And then sometimes you're setting, this is where I need you to be. How do we get you from here to there? You should connect with your employees as you would connect to a customer. They are your customers. That's what you're focused on. If you take care of your customers will take care of you. If you're selling a product and a customer comes back to you and you make it right, that customer has that respect. As a leader, you need to practice treating your employees as your customer, because your output as a leader is those employees. Championing them when they get to a level, they know so much that you now come to them for expertise. You are succeeding as a manager and as a leader. Just like a good boss can encourage empowerment, develop people, a bad boss can take a good staff and destroy it. A bad boss causes the best employees to flee and the remainder to lose all motivation. People don't leave bad jobs. They leave bad bosses. They leave poor management, bosses and management and supervisors who they perceive do not appreciate their value. If all you're asking for is results and numbers and never asking about the employee, you are forgetting that your employees are people and you're not seeing their value. If you were a salesperson and you didn't see the value in your customer, you're not going to have that customer, and they're definitely not going to be a repeat customer. If your customers feel like you don't see value in them, they will not come back to you. Some of my employees have come to me and asked questions on how I approach certain things in leadership. Recently, one of my employees asked me how I go about managing cynicism and toxicity when I have an employee. How do I approach that? It all comes back to relationship building, to having those earnest conversations and also not letting it just sit. There are times I let my employees vent, discuss, and talk about things, express their frustration, express their hesitation about policy. I try to never let it get to the point of demotivating people or being toxic or destroying interest in the company or the company's mission. If I were to step in and say, none of you are allowed to talk negatively about customers, company policy, if I were to come in and do a hard lockdown on that, then they are just going to shut down with me, and they're still going to continue those conversations with others, because if they are feeling these things, they're going to talk about them. Too much locking down and people are going to feel oppressed. They're going to feel hopeless. At the same time, if you just let these conversations continue, and worse, if you engage in it, you're just dunking everyone in acid. You are maintaining that environment of toxicity. And eventually, your people are going to lose the will to work. One of the ways I have approached levels of toxicity with employees is if I see someone complain, maybe they complain in a public chat, and if I'm able to see it, if I recognize it, sometimes someone else will bring it to me as a concern. That's something that I take seriously and I'll watch. You said this in chat. I want to know why you feel this way. Sometimes what they said is a reality, but sometimes it's not. Actually, most of the time it's not, because they are getting a small picture or they are hearing what someone said based on that picture and they're reacting on it. Almost every conversation I've had, when I say, can you tell me why you said this? I hear what they're saying and I understand it. And sometimes I have to say, I understand your perspective. I totally get it. Let me explain to you what it actually looks like and how it works. And I'm not afraid to have that level of transparency with them, because especially if they're frustrated about something, they already know what's going wrong. If they're frustrated with a policy and it's a poor policy, you saying this is not a poor policy, deal with it, is going to do nothing. You being transparent, this is why the policy exists. I agree with you that there's some pieces of it that might be outdated, but this is why we can't do anything about that right now. That builds relationships and that builds that respect. I have had a few times where misinformation has spread through my employees from other employees. It just kind of builds, and then someone says something. Well, that's not necessarily true. Where did that come from? And I might approach it, oh, where did you hear that? Oh, well, I can tell you it's not true. This is what actually happens. And sometimes I have to tell them a piece of it or all of it, depending on what level of transparency I can have. There have been times where I have shut that stuff down once, twice, 3 times, and then I see it come back around, and at that point, I'm pulling them into the office and saying, I said 3 months ago that was not accurate, and yet you're continuing to say it. So now you're disrespecting me because you have this problem that you think is occurring and you never came to me and asked me if it was right. You just went out and told everyone this is what's happening. I have a problem with that. You don't tell my team a reality that's not a reality. You are misleading my team. I told you that's not the reality and you're continuing that. I have had these conversations with employees. I'm sorry if you're frustrated. I'm frustrated too. This might not be ideal, but you are not to tell my employees things that aren't true. You are not to stir them up. This is not true. You don't spread falsities, period. If you do, that's disrespecting me. Every time I have had to have that level of difficult conversation, it has changed almost instantly. Even with the employees who have seemed to be the most toxic and the most unwilling to accept, they have responded positively because I've already built that relationship with them. Is there something I can do to help you better? If I start the conversation like that and they say, no, you're great, you're a great manager, so why are you doing things that disrespect me? That goes a long way versus if I'm coming to them and I've never given them respect and I'm telling them, don't disrespect me. I've seen it happen so many times where a manager will not give an employee respect and then they expect to get that respect from the employee, and even if that employee steps out and does a great job and does everything they can possibly for the manager, that manager will never give that employee good job or tell them what they're doing right. They will only ever focus on what they're doing wrong. And then they wonder, why are we losing our good employees? We need to make our benefits better to attract better employees. No, you don't need to make your benefits better. You need to make your bosses better. People don't leave bad jobs. They leave bad bosses, poor management, who don't appreciate or understand their value. They leave their managers who don't respect them and aren't willing to respect them. A person who feels appreciated is always going to do more than what is expected of them. Just because you have the title manager doesn't make you a leader. Titles don't make you a leader. Leadership is not about titles. Leadership's not about positions. Leadership's not about the flow charts, your size of your team, how many positions you have under you. Leadership, as John Maxwell says, is about one life influencing another. You can't necessarily offer correction if you don't have a relationship to build it on. The relationship is that foundation which a lot of your leadership is built on. When I talk about relational leadership, I'm not necessarily talking about changing your entire structure to not have a write-up system, to not have corrective actions. I'm talking about making sure that all of your leadership comes from that foundation of relationship. It comes from that foundation of, we're here to empower people. We are here to learn about our employees, to help employees succeed. Our employees are our customers. Hope you found this video interesting. Really appreciate any likes and subscribes, any shares you can offer. Also, if you would like to continue the conversation, please comment below. Who is the best leader you have ever worked with? What did they do that made them the great leader, and why do you remember them? When did you leave a job solely because of the boss? What did they do that might have shown that they didn't appreciate you, that they didn't respect you, that they didn't value you as an employee? Was it actually the leader who did that? Was it the company that did that? Or was that your own perception of they didn't value you because they just weren't having enough conversation with you? Maybe they did really value you, but there wasn't that conversation. I see that a lot of times where we have good managers who just can't continue the relationship or the conversation, and you have employees who feel like they're not valued simply because we're not having that conversation. Thank you for tuning in.